Welcome to True Echo, where the quietest voices often carry the loudest truths. Today's story is one of silence, struggle, and stunning transformation, a tale that proves how a single gesture can ripple through glass ceilings. You may want to sit down for this one, because when a shy black maid greeted her CEO in sign language, she didn't just change her life, she made history. Janelle Brooks had never meant to be seen. Not like this. Her world was one of quiet rhythms, mop strokes across tile floors, the soft rattle of janitor keys, elevator dings echoing through the empty corporate cathedral of Hawthorne and Bell Financial. Towering glass and polished marble defined the building, but its soul was made of whispers, silent cleaners, overnight security, the forgotten machinery that made the corporate world gleam by morning. Janelle was 36, and she'd worked the night shift for nearly 5 years. She was born deaf in a family that loved her, but never quite learned her language. That shaped her life into one of independence, invisibility, and control. She didn't need much. Her cousin Carla texted her daily. Her cat Mango slept by her side. She could afford her studio apartment near Watt Avenue, and her battered Corolla ran most of the time. What more could she ask for? That night, the building was near empty. Janelle had just scrubbed down a sticky breakroom sink and mopped Thai curry off the 12th floor carpet. She was on the executive wing now, final task of the shift. Quiet, polished, a kind of stillness that didn't welcome interruption. As she sprayed the glass doors and wiped in small, perfect circles, a reflection caught her eye. A man in a sharp suit, crisp collar, briefcase in hand. Brandon Teller. CEO. He wasn't supposed to be there this late. And certainly not in front of her. Their eyes met. Janelle froze. He paused too, scanning her badge, then the cart of cleaning supplies. A polite nod. That's all she expected. But then, she did something strange. Instinct, perhaps. She signed, "Good evening." Just 2 words, slow, fluid. She didn't expect a response. Most people didn't even recognize it. But this time, he blinked. Then, haltingly, awkwardly, he signed back, "Thank you." It was clumsy. Barely readable. But unmistakably sincere. Janelle blinked. Her lips curved slightly. Then he nodded and walked away. That should have been it. A flicker of humanity in a sea of silence. But when Janelle pulled into the parking lot the next night, 2 security guards were waiting. One was new, rigid posture, military haircut. The other, Brian, nodded tightly. Something wasn't right. Brian mouthed words too fast. She raised a hand, calmly signing, "Please type it." He pulled out his phone. "You're needed upstairs. Executive floor. We're escorting you." Her heart stumbled. Why? Did she break a rule? Was she being fired? Brian shook his head. No trouble. But his face said something else. They led her past the janitor lockers, past the service elevator she always used, and to the main elevator. Her chest was tight. Each ding as they ascended felt like a countdown. 21st floor. Executive offices. She stepped onto plush carpet. Marble and glass shimmered under the soft lights. The air was still, like a museum. A woman in a charcoal suit greeted her. "Ms. Brooks," she said slowly, with a practiced smile. "They're ready for you." Janelle stepped through the frosted doors. Inside the glass-walled conference room sat Brandon Teller and another woman, maybe HR. He stood as she entered. "You clean here," he signed. She nodded. He hesitated. "Last night, you signed to me." "Why?" She replied with her hands. "It's how I say hello. Respect." Brandon turned to the other woman. "She's the one I told you about. Sharp. Kind." Then he turned back to Janelle. "I took ASL in college. 2 years. I forgot most of it. You reminded me. She didn't know what to say. Then, he opened a folder. The first page read, Internal Hire Consideration. Administrative Pilot Program. He explained in careful words and halting signs, he wanted voices from every level of the company. Real perspectives. New eyes. I hadn't planned any of this until last night, he said. But that moment stuck with me. Janelle stared at him, stunned. She signed, Why me? He replied, Because you made me stop. Think. I haven't done that in a long time. She didn't sleep that night. Janelle lay awake for hours that night, staring at the cracks in her ceiling like they might offer her answers. Mango curled at her feet, snoring gently, unaware that his owner's world had tilted on its axis. It didn't make sense. People like her, quiet, janitorial, invisible, didn't get noticed, much less offered anything beyond a paycheck and maybe a Christmas bonus if payroll remembered. Yet here she was, being considered for an internal hire program she hadn't even known existed. She kept replaying it in her mind. The CEO. His hands fumbling through the old sign language he barely remembered. The folder. The words, You made me think. By morning, the high of possibility had been replaced by the dull buzz of anxiety. This was too fast. Too sudden. And fast things, she knew, often led to sharp falls. Still, Janelle showed up for work. Same navy blue uniform. Same silent entrance through the side lot. But instead of a mop and cart waiting, a woman from HR, different from yesterday, was already there holding a clipboard and a forced smile. Ms. Brooks, welcome, she said slowly. You'll be starting upstairs today. Janelle blinked. She raised her hand and signed, Why so soon? The woman hesitated. Mr. Teller believes in momentum. He wants to act while the idea's fresh. Janelle wasn't sure that was a good thing. Acting quickly often meant acting recklessly. Still, she followed. Back to the 21st floor. But not to the conference room this time. Instead, she was led down a sleek hallway and into a small office, narrow, modern, cold. On the desk was a tablet, a notepad, and a nameplate that read simply, Brooks. Temporary desk, the woman said. You'll be shadowing the executive assistant. We'll evaluate from there. The door clicked shut. Janelle stood in the middle of the room, arms at her sides, staring at her name like it belonged to someone else. Then, knock, knock. A woman walked in. Mid-30s. Curly hair, blazer, wide eyes. I'm Kendra, she said, half smiling. You're shadowing me today. Janelle nodded. Kendra looked uncertain. Do you talk? Janelle signed, I sign. Oh. I don't know sign, Kendra admitted. Janelle pulled out her phone and typed, That's okay. I read lips. We'll figure it out. Kendra looked relieved. All right. Let's make it work. And they did, at first. Kendra explained everything slowly, appointment scheduling, inbox management, setting up meetings, conference room etiquette. Janelle followed along, sharp-eyed and laser-focused. But by mid-morning, the office's usual rhythm returned, and with it, the whispers. An older man passed by and muttered too loudly, We're hiring assistants who can't talk now. Two interns laughed as they walked past the copy room, one mimicking crude hand gestures behind Janelle's back. She saw it all. She didn't flinch. Didn't cry. She'd lived through worse. But something shifted inside her, a tension, a low hum of something sharper than pain. Not rage. Not yet. But something near it. To her credit, Kendra tried. She slowed down her speech. Typed out things when meetings moved too fast. Even stood beside her when questions arose. But the air was changing. And Janelle could feel it. She wasn't being seen as a novelty anymore. She was being seen as a threat. Someone whispered that she was just a publicity stunt. Another suggested she was there to meet a diversity quota. And one day, Kendra found her in the break room, quiet, tapping her fingers on the countertop. "You okay?" she asked gently. Janelle typed on her phone. "Did I take someone's job?" Kendra looked pained. "No. No, you didn't. This program was new. It was made for people like you." But the next morning told a different story. A woman Janelle had never seen walked into her office without knocking, tall, composed, face unreadable. "You're in my seat," she said. Janelle raised her hands slowly and signed, "Are you the assistant I'm shadowing?" The woman smirked. "I was the assistant. Until yesterday." She slammed a notepad down on the desk and walked out. Janelle stood there, pulse racing. No one had told her anything about someone being replaced. That night, Kendra found her by the printer. "Hey, that was Melissa," she said quietly. "She's been reassigned. Has nothing to do with you." But it had everything to do with her. The next week, the resentment turned from whispers to daggers. Someone sent a group email titled "New Office Policy, subtitles for all meetings now." It was clearly a dig at her. No name. No consequences. Brandon heard about it and called her in. This time, he didn't smile. He looked tired. Frustrated. "I'm sorry," he said slowly. She signed, "Did I take someone's job?" He shook his head. "You're here because you earned it. You've done more in 1 week than most in 6 months. Then he paused. "I didn't plan for this. But I'm not backing down either. You reminded me that leadership isn't just about seeing people, it's about listening." Janelle's hands twitched. "This job, it's more than a promotion. It's being seen." He nodded. "Then let's make sure they keep seeing you." But what neither of them knew was that someone was about to make sure she was never seen again. Because less than 48 hours later, Janelle's name would be on the company's most sensitive email mistake of the year. And her silence would be used against her. It began with a single sheet of paper. Janelle had just finished setting up the boardroom for a late strategy session when a knock came at the glass. It was the IT manager, holding a printed email in one hand like it was radioactive. He walked in, eyes scanning her, posture tense. "We traced the leak," he said. "The confidential salary file. It was sent from your workstation." The words felt like a slap. Janelle didn't move at first. Her mind went blank. Her hands instinctively signed, "I didn't send anything." He blinked. "You, what?" She pulled out her phone, typed quickly, "I didn't send that email. I didn't even have access to those files." The man's mouth flattened. "I'm just here to report the trace. I'm not accusing anyone." But his eyes said otherwise. Within an hour, the whole 21st floor knew. Whispers turned into sidelong glances. Conversations stopped when she entered a room. Kendra came to her with worry in her eyes. "They think you leaked the salaries," she whispered. "That vendor never should have gotten that file." Janelle sat frozen at her desk. Her terminal. Her name. But none of it made sense. She didn't even have clearance to touch that file. How could her credentials be used? When Brandon called her into his office later that evening, he looked 10 years older. "Legal wants to suspend you," he said plainly. "HR too." Her throat tightened. Her hands moved quickly. "You said I could come to you. You said you'd believe me." He nodded slowly. "That's why I haven't approved it yet. But they're pushing hard." "Then check the access logs," she signed. "Every time I log in, every IP, every click. You'll see I wasn't even at my desk." Brandon paused, studying her, then picked up the phone and called IT himself. "I want full audit logs," he said. "User sessions. Timestamps. Find out exactly who accessed what, and when." He looked at Janelle. "You're staying in here with me until we get that." She sat in the corner of his office for almost an hour, unmoving. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, Sacramento glowed under the twilight. But inside, it felt like the air was made of stone. Finally, the IT manager returned with a stack of printed logs. Brandon scanned the sheet, his brows drawing together. Then his eyes widened slightly. "You were logged out at 6:03 p.m., he said. "The email went out at 6:12. You weren't even at your desk." Janelle signed, "I was in the break room." "Ask Kendra." The IT manager added, "Someone spoofed her login. Probably used her machine while it was unlocked. It's a shared environment, if someone's careless, it's easy to impersonate them." Brandon's face darkened. Find out who. But Janelle already knew. The next day, Kendra found her by the coffee machine. "I think it was Melissa," she whispered. "The day she stormed out. She passed your desk. I thought she grabbed her charger, but she had something in her hand." A chill ran down Janelle's spine. A sticky note. Her password had been on a sticky note, temporary, for the training systems. She'd meant to update it. She never did. She planned this, Janelle signed, fists clenched. "She wanted me out." Kendra nodded grimly. "Looks that way." That night, Brandon sent out a formal email to the entire floor. The leak was real. But it didn't come from Janelle. He didn't name Melissa, but her desk was empty the next day. Her nameplate gone. The atmosphere on the floor changed, but not in the way Janelle hoped. People didn't smile. They didn't apologize. They just got quieter. Distant. Being vindicated didn't erase suspicion. Not in this world. Especially not for her. But some things did shift. One executive, a woman from strategy, stopped by her desk and said, "You caught that double-booked meeting last week. Thank you." Another man, from finance, asked her how to say, "Good morning," in ASL. She showed him. Slowly. Clearly. And he signed it back. The tiniest crack in the ice. Later that week, Brandon passed her in the hallway, glanced up, and signed, "I see you." It wasn't perfect. But it was sincere. Janelle signed back, "Thank you." But peace didn't last long. 3 days later, her phone buzzed during her lunch break. It was a message from Carla, "Are you okay? You're trending." Attached was a screenshot. Janelle's breath caught in her chest. A photo of her, slightly blurry but clearly recognizable, standing in front of a whiteboard during a staff meeting. The caption read, "When DEI hires go too far. She can't even talk, but she's in charge of meetings. Is this your future, America?" Tens of thousands of likes. Hundreds of comments. Cruel. Ignorant. Violent. She scrolled, eyes stinging, chest tight. Diversity hire. I bet she can't even use a phone. This is what happens when HR runs a company. She stood, heart hammering in her chest. Kendra saw her face and rushed over. What happened? Janelle showed her the post. Kendra read it, hands trembling. They took this during the strategy session. From inside the room. That meant it was someone on the floor. Someone she worked beside. She didn't go home right away that night. Instead, she sat in the stairwell on the 20th floor, legs drawn up, phone in her lap, staring at the blurred image of herself that had become a symbol, without her consent. She was no longer just Janelle. She was that girl. That story. That debate. And it wasn't fair. Kendra joined her. Sat silently for a few minutes. Then typed. You don't have to keep proving yourself. Janelle took the phone. Typed. If I don't, who will? Kendra responded. You already have. You shouldn't have to bleed for people to believe in you. They sat in silence. A silence that Janelle didn't fear. It was the silence of being understood. The next day, Brandon held an emergency staff meeting. Company-wide. He didn't name her. He didn't need to. We talk a lot about culture here, he said. But culture isn't what's printed on the wall. It's how we treat the people we think we can get away with treating badly. He looked around the room. Eyes steady. Voice calm. I've seen more integrity from someone who can't speak than I've seen from some people who won't shut up. That afternoon, the post vanished from Twitter. The account that posted it? Suspended. Security traced the leak to a junior marketing associate. She was terminated quietly. But scars don't vanish with an apology. Not when they're public. Not when they cut through your identity. That evening, Janelle sat at her desk. Her email pinged. Subject line, permanent placement offer, executive administrative assistant. She stared at the screen. Salary. Benefits. Private office. It was everything she'd been promised. Everything she'd earned. And yet, she didn't click accept. Not yet. Because sometimes the hardest question isn't, am I good enough? It's, do they deserve me? Janelle didn't respond to the offer that night. She shut her laptop and sat in silence, staring at the dim glow of her studio ceiling. Mango nuzzled her arm, but she didn't move. The email burned in her mind. Permanent placement. It should have felt like a triumph. Like a finish line. But all Janelle could feel was exhaustion. Not from the work, but from proving herself over and over. Fighting whispers. Dodging sabotage. Becoming a target just for being different. She didn't want to be a symbol. She just wanted to work. 2 days passed before she stepped foot inside Hawthorne and Bell again. No email response. No warning. She walked in wearing her usual navy blue uniform, keycard clipped to her chest. At the front desk, the receptionist blinked, startled. Ms. Brooks? You. Janelle signed calmly, I'm here. Security didn't stop her. No one asked questions. She walked straight to the main elevators, past the ones she used to clean, and pressed 21. When the doors opened, everything felt still. Too still. Kendra spotted her first. You came, she whispered, standing from her desk. Janelle signed, I wasn't sure I would. She walked past her, toward Brandon's office. Didn't knock. Just waited by the window, the skyline of Sacramento spread out before her. Brandon walked in 10 minutes later, coffee in hand. He froze. I didn't think you'd come back, he said softly. She turned. Calm. Steady. Signed, neither did I. He sat down across from her, studying her expression. You've had to carry more in the last 3 weeks than some people deal with in years, he said. And you haven't complained once. She didn't respond. I won't ask you to be a face, or a symbol, or a savior, he continued. But if you want to stay, really stay, we'll support you. Not just me. Legal. HR. Everyone. She opened her bag. Pulled out a folded document. Laid it on the desk. Her signed offer letter, beneath which she'd written one clear, sharp line in bold handwriting. I'm not your symbol. I'm your colleague. Brandon stared at it for a long second. Then smiled. Good, he said. That's exactly what we need. From that day forward, Janelle Brooks became the official executive assistant to the CEO of Hawthorne and Bell Financial. She had her own desk. Her own nameplate. No more borrowed logins, no more temporary tags. And she earned every inch of that space. Her systems ran smoother than any assistant before her. Her files were flawless. Her meetings were precise. Brandon trusted her with details he didn't even share with his senior VPs. Kendra. Promoted to Director of Admin Coordination within a month. Their bond became the quiet engine of the executive floor. And slowly, the company around them began to shift. It wasn't loud. It wasn't revolutionary. But it was real. One by one, people started learning how to say good morning and thank you in ASL. Basic signs. Clumsy at first. But genuine. The company added accessibility features to its intranet, email, and internal communication systems. Captions were enabled on all video meetings. HR brought in an ASL interpreter twice a month. And every new employee, regardless of role, underwent a new inclusivity training module. One designed by Janelle herself. She included videos, real-life simulations, and a powerful segment titled, How to See Who's Always Been There. Still, not everyone changed. Some employees still avoided eye contact. A few kept their distance. But they were the exception, not the rule. One afternoon, months later, a fresh intern stopped by her desk. Nervous. Holding a stack of folders. "You're the one who," he started, then stopped, unsure how to finish. Janelle smiled. Signed, "I'm just me." Behind her, on the glass wall that Brandon once said he'd redesign, hung a single framed photo. Her first day sitting at her desk. No plaque. No text. Just a moment captured in silence. Proof that she belonged. That she had always belonged. But then came the letter. Folded, unmarked, slipped under her keyboard during her lunch break. She almost didn't notice it. But when she unfolded the page, her heart sank. You think you've won, but you're just a trend. A quiet maid in a shiny suit. This place will spit you out eventually. No name. No signature. Just that. That night, she didn't cry. She didn't tremble. She walked to the 20th floor stairwell and sat in the same spot she had weeks ago, knees tucked to her chest. Then she pulled out her phone and typed a message to Carla. They tried again. Carla replied instantly. What are you going to do? Janelle thought for a long moment. Then typed. Stay. Because staying was the answer. Not silence. Not retreat. Presence. And in a world that had tried so hard to erase her, presence was the loudest protest she had. Janelle didn't tell Brandon about the note immediately. Not because she didn't trust him, she did, but because she needed to decide what kind of reaction it deserved. She'd lived her entire life managing other people's discomfort, walking carefully between confrontation and silence. But this was different. This was a threat wrapped in mockery. A coward's warning. You're just a trend. She pinned the note to her corkboard the next morning, not out of pride, but as a reminder. If someone still felt threatened enough to sneak around and deliver anonymous venom, she was doing something right. That day, she wore a brighter lipstick than usual and walked the executive floor with a bit more confidence in her step. Not because she felt untouchable, but because she was done shrinking. At lunchtime, Kendra caught up with her by the elevators. You okay? She asked, eyeing her closely. Janelle hesitated. Then handed her the note. Kendra read it. Her jaw tightened. Do you want me to take this to HR? Janelle shook her head. Then signed, not yet. Let's see if it gets bolder. Kendra looked like she wanted to argue, but nodded. That same afternoon, during a company-wide leadership summit, Brandon gave Janelle a signal from across the room. A small point toward the laptop. Her cue. She stood, walked to the podium, and plugged in the accessibility module she'd designed. The presentation was simple, short video clips, subtle captions, and one powerful message. Inclusion isn't charity. It's clarity. She stood off to the side while Brandon narrated the slides, but she was the one every eye turned to when it ended. And when it was over, she signed, "Thank you for listening." A few clapped. Most were quiet, but not in the cold way they once were. It was reflective. Thoughtful. She returned to her desk feeling lighter, until she found a sticky note on her monitor. "Maybe you should clean the conference room while you're at it." No name. Again. The letters were printed deliberately, like someone had practiced being cruel. Janelle peeled the note off and slid it into her drawer. That night, she stayed late. Not because she was assigned to, but because she needed the silence to think. She wandered back to the 12th floor. Her old route. She touched the doorknobs she once polished, the vending machines she used to raid after long mops. The scent of lemon cleaner still clung to the corners. She missed the quiet sometimes. But not the invisibility. The next morning, a surprising email hit her inbox: "Interview request, feature for company magazine." The internal comms team wanted to highlight her journey. Brandon had suggested it. A photo. A short profile. A chance to inspire. She froze. That would mean more exposure. More eyes. More scrutiny. More chances to be hated. But also, more chances to be seen. She tapped her fingers against her desk, heart thudding. Then hit accept. The interview was scheduled for the following Thursday. The morning of, she wore a dark green blouse, hair in a neat twist, soft makeup. The writer, a kind woman named Elise, met her in a sunlit corner of the 21st floor lounge. Elise typed as Janelle signed. The questions were personal: her childhood, her hearing, her journey through Hawthorne and Bell. Then came the big one. "Why stay?" Janelle paused. Then signed, "Because I belong. And I want other people like me to know they can belong too." Elise smiled. That's the perfect closing quote. The article ran a week later. Title: "The Quiet Force on the 21st Floor." It was respectful, heartfelt. It mentioned her beginnings, her sabotage, and her rise. The photo showed her standing next to the CEO, one hand raised in greeting. The feedback? Overwhelming. Emails poured in from employees across departments, people she'd never met. IT techs. Payroll analysts. New hires. "I showed this to my daughter, she just started learning ASL. My cousin's deaf. I wish he had someone like you to look up to. This made me think. I'm sorry I didn't before." But not all responses were kind. A reply-all email, again anonymous, circulated the next day. "When your janitor gets more press than your CFO, it might be time to rebrand." Janelle reported that one to HR. Brandon responded personally, standing in the middle of the executive bullpen, saying loudly enough for everyone to hear. "If any of you think recognizing excellence is a bad look, then you're the rebrand we need." The floor went quiet. No more notes after that. But Janelle had already made her decision. She walked into HR the following week and requested that her name badge be updated. Not to janitorial staff. Not even admin assistant. Just one word: staff. No limits. No brackets. No ceilings. That same Friday, she arrived early, coffee in hand, tablet tucked under her arm. Kendra joined her, laughing about a typo in a scheduling email. "You know," Kendra said, nudging her, "you scare some of them." Janelle raised an eyebrow. "Because you're not asking permission to be here anymore," Kendra added. "You're just here. That freaks them out." Janelle smiled. Then signed, "Good. Let them adjust." Because she was no longer asking for a seat. She was the table now. And anyone who couldn't handle that could find a different room. The air on the 21st floor felt different now, not because people had fully embraced her, but because they no longer dared to ignore her. Janelle had become more than a symbol of quiet perseverance. She had become a fixture, steady, reliable, commanding in her calm. Meetings ran smoother when she was involved. Projects stayed on track. And no one dared forget a deadline when her fingers moved swiftly to sign "you missed it." But comfort has a funny way of breeding complacency. And some people never forget what they think they lost. Melissa returned. Not to the same position, of course. HR was smarter than that. But she resurfaced 2 floors down as a strategic workflow consultant, whatever that meant. Word got around fast. And by the following Monday, Melissa had already taken 2 elevator rides up to the 21st, both times under the pretense of cross-department collaboration. Janelle spotted her instantly, loitering near the espresso bar with a fake laugh and a clipboard she clearly wasn't using. Their eyes met for a half-second. Melissa smirked. The message was clear: I'm not gone. And I'm not done. That afternoon, Janelle found an internal calendar notification she hadn't created. Meeting, Access Protocol Review. Organizer, Melissa Raymond. And she had invited only one other person, Janelle. Janelle stared at the screen. This wasn't procedure. This wasn't even protocol. It was bait. She took a screenshot, saved it, then calmly walked to Brandon's office. She didn't knock. He looked up from a spreadsheet. "She's fishing," he said, reading the subject line. Janelle signed. "You knew she was back." "I knew she was in the building. I didn't think she'd be reckless again." "You gave her another chance." "I gave HR a bone to throw. But I didn't give her you." "Don't go to that meeting." Janelle shook her head slowly. "I'm going. But I'm not going alone." Brandon stared at her, then nodded. "You want backup?" She signed, "I want Kendra." He smiled slightly. Smart call. An hour later, Janelle and Kendra entered conference room B. Melissa was already seated, arms folded, that same smug grin. "Didn't expect a chaperone," she said sweetly. Janelle pulled out her tablet and typed a single sentence. "Every conversation in this room will be documented." Melissa leaned back. "Of course. That's all I wanted." She launched into a bizarre monologue about digital hygiene, shared workstations, and revisiting access culture. It was a tangled mess of corporate buzzwords and veiled jabs. "I mean," Melissa added with faux innocence, "if someone had helped me understand those systems earlier, maybe none of that email drama would have happened." Kendra leaned forward. "Or maybe if you hadn't stolen someone's credentials and tried to get them fired, none of that would have happened." Melissa stiffened. "Excuse me?" Janelle didn't flinch. She simply turned her tablet around. On it was a security report. Time-stamped. Dated. Showing Melissa's badge scan at Janelle's desk. The night of the leak. Brandon had given it to her quietly, before she entered the room. Melissa's face drained of color. This doesn't prove anything." Kendra stood. "This meeting is over." Janelle signed, "Next time you try to sabotage someone, don't underestimate what we remember." They walked out together. Melissa was formally dismissed the next day, this time for good. But Janelle didn't feel victorious. She felt resolute. Because this wasn't just about Melissa. It was about everyone who still saw her as a temporary exception, not a permanent fixture. That week, she proposed a new initiative. A quiet but radical one. Project Quiet Rise. An internal mentorship program for overlooked staff, janitors, food service, security. People who knew the bones of the company better than anyone, but had never been invited to the table. Brandon approved it without hesitation. So did the board. HR, surprisingly, offered full support. Within a month, 5 new men's were shadowing departments they'd never even been allowed to step into before. One janitor helped restructure inventory protocols in facilities. A cafeteria worker proposed an app that cut food waste by 40%. A night security guard now handled overnight logistics support. Turns out, he had a degree in systems engineering he'd never been able to use. The building began to hum differently. And one afternoon, Janelle received a letter in her mailbox. Handwritten. No return address. It read, "You're still a maid. Just with a better view." She stared at it for a long moment. Then she pulled out a pen. On the back, she wrote, "You're still scared." Just with a smaller voice. She filed the letter away. Not because it hurt. But because it reminded her, there would always be people who needed her to be small. And it was her job now, not just for herself, but for everyone watching, to stay big anyway. That Friday, as she walked through the building for a late-night debrief, a young janitor paused mid-mop and shyly signed. "How do you say, thank you, in ASL?" Janelle stopped. Showed him slowly. He repeated it, hands trembling. Then she smiled, signed back, "You're welcome." He beamed. It wasn't a revolution. But it was real. And sometimes, that's the same thing. The first time Janelle saw her own reflection on the wall-mounted screen in the company's new onboarding video, she didn't flinch. It played in the lobby now, on a loop, clips of the new mentorship program, snippets of inclusion training, glimpses of real employees from every walk of life. Not staged. Not sanitized. There she was, seated beside Brandon during an all-hands strategy call. Signing confidently while Kendra translated in real time. No subtitles needed. Just presence. Janelle had gone from cleaning the windows to being the face of clarity. But she hadn't forgotten what it took to get there. Or what it cost. And just as she began to believe the worst was behind her, another unexpected challenge arrived, but not in the form of sabotage or resentment. This time, it came as a choice. Brandon called her into his office one morning, his demeanor calm but guarded. "I got an offer," he said, closing the door. "A position in D.C. A private equity firm. Full C-suite. National scope." Janelle stared at him. "Signed, you're leaving." He nodded slowly. "I haven't accepted yet. But it's serious. And it's fast-moving. What happens here if you go?" Brandon folded his hands. "The board asked for my recommendation on succession planning." Janelle waited. Then he said the word she never expected. "I named you." Her pulse jumped. "I told them the next chief of staff should be someone who understands every layer of this company. Someone who's actually built bridges, quietly, without applause." He slid a folder across the desk. "It's not official. Yet. But if I leave, and if you say yes, it will be." She didn't pick up the folder. She just sat there, stunned. Chief of staff. From mop bucket to marble desk. From silence to strategy. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she asked to sleep on it. That night, she stood in her old apartment, staring out the window as the streetlights blinked over Watt Avenue. She thought about her first night on the 12th floor. The soap dispenser. The curry spill. The CEO she had greeted with a reflexive hand sign. She thought about Melissa. About the Twitter post. About being called a trend. She wasn't supposed to make it this far. Not in a world that mistook quiet for weakness. But she had. And now she stood at the edge of something even greater. The next morning, she returned the folder with a note inside. "If I accept, it's not to fill your shoes. It's to walk in my own." Brandon read it. Smiled. "Good. That's exactly the point." 3 weeks later, the company announced Brandon's departure, and Janelle Brooks' promotion to Chief of Staff. There were headlines. Some celebratory. Others skeptical. But Janelle didn't read most of them. She was too busy working. She reorganized operations. Instituted a rotational training program for executive aides. Launched a scholarship initiative for deaf and disabled students seeking careers in corporate fields. And quietly, she gave 3 anonymous employees a second chance, people HR had written off, but whose stories sounded too familiar to ignore. At the company's end-of-year banquet, Janelle took the stage, not to speak, but to sign. An interpreter stood beside her, but she barely needed her. Because now, the room understood her. And more importantly, they had learned how to understand her. Her final sign was simple: "Thank you for listening." The crowd stood. Not because they were told to. But because they meant it. Afterward, a young girl approached her with wide eyes and trembling fingers. She was the daughter of one of the facility's team leads. Her hands slowly shaped the words, "I'm deaf too." Janelle knelt and signed back, "You can be anything." And in that moment, everything made sense. This wasn't just about one promotion, one story, one woman breaking through. This was about the people behind the glass. The ones still scrubbing, still folding, still invisible. Janelle Brooks had shown them a map. Not to escape their silence. But to be seen inside of it. Because the truth was never that she couldn't speak. It was that the world had never learned how to listen. Until now. Sometimes, the people we overlook carry the greatest power of all: perspective. Janelle's story isn't just about resilience, it's about rewriting the rules of who gets to lead, who gets to belong, and who gets to rise. If this story moved you, share it with someone who's ever felt invisible. And if you're in a position of power, ask yourself, who haven't I noticed? You might just discover the strength your company, your community, or your heart, has been missing. Subscribe to True Echo for more real stories that resonate deeply. Drop a comment below and let us know who you think deserves to be seen next.